The Galactic Council chamber looked exactly like what you'd expect from a bunch of aliens with too much time and not enough self-awareness. Floating crystalline platforms arranged in a perfect circle, holographic displays showing off their collective superiority, and enough pretentious architecture to make a medieval cathedral jealous. At the center of this cosmic ego trip sat Chairman Vexthal, a 7-foot-tall purple squid creature who apparently never met a dramatic pause he didn't like. "Behold," Vexthal announced, his tentacles writhing with what passed for enthusiasm among his species, "the primitive warriors of Earth." The way he said Earth made it sound like he was discussing a particularly unpleasant fungal infection. Ambassador Jack Murphy sat in the defendant's chair, or as the aliens called it, the petitioner's circle of hopeful inadequacy. Real subtle, these guys. Murphy was the kind of man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, possibly including a root canal appointment or a tax audit. His rumpled suit and tired expression suggested he'd dealt with bureaucratic nonsense before, just usually not the intergalactic variety. "Ambassador Murphy," Deputy Quindell chimed in, his voice hitting that perfect pitch of condescension that made fingernails on chalkboard sound pleasant. "We have reviewed your species' military records. Quite entertaining." Murphy raised an eyebrow. "Entertaining. That's one way to put it." "Indeed," Vexthal continued, pulling up a holographic display that showed various human conflicts throughout history. "Your warriors fight with such primitive weapons, chemical explosives, projectile weapons, and the emotions. Oh, the emotions they display in combat." The council erupted in what Murphy assumed was laughter, though it sounded more like a zoo at feeding time. Various alien species chittered, gurgled, and made sounds that probably violated several noise ordinances. "But this," Quindell said, highlighting a particular mission report, "this exemplifies human military incompetence perfectly." The hologram showed a rescue mission gone wrong, deep in hostile alien territory. One of your soldiers, tasked with a simple extraction, failed completely. Lost contact after sending a single-word transmission. "What was this profound final message?" Vexthal asked, tentacles practically vibrating with anticipation. Murphy glanced at the report. "Present." The chamber exploded with alien mirth again. "Present," Vexthal repeated, his voice dripping with mock solemnity. "Such tactical brilliance, such military precision. The warrior reports for duty, then promptly dies." "Fascinating strategic thinking," added Science Officer Pipley from her floating platform. "Report your location, then become immediately unavailable for further reporting." Murphy leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You find that amusing?" "Amusing?" General Zorthak rumbled from across the chamber, his battle-scarred carapace gleaming under the artificial lights. "It's pathetic. A proper warrior would have provided tactical intelligence, enemy positions, extraction routes. Instead, your soldier wastes his final transmission on attendance." The council continued their mockery, each species adding their own cultural spin on human inadequacy. The crystalline beings made sounds like wind chimes having an anxiety attack. The gaseous life forms created what Murphy could only describe as judgmental fog patterns, and through it all Vexthal orchestrated the mockery like a conductor leading the universe's most pretentious orchestra. "This," Vexthal declared, raising his tentacles for silence, "is why humanity shall never join the Galactic Defense Force. You lack the proper temperament, the necessary discipline, the basic competence required for civilized warfare." Murphy nodded thoughtfully. "I see. And I suppose your species have never made similar mistakes." "Mistakes?" Quindell sputtered. "We are the pinnacle of military evolution. Our strategies are flawless. Our execution is perfect." "Perfect," Murphy repeated. "Right. Well, I hate to be that guy, but before you completely write us off, maybe we should talk about what present actually meant." The laughter died down slightly. Vexthal's eye stalks focused on Murphy with renewed interest. "Oh, please, enlighten us with your primitive wisdom." Murphy stood up, straightening his jacket. "You know what? I think I will." Section 2. The Alien Superiority Complex. First, General Zorthik interrupted, his scarred carapace clicking as he shifted positions. Allow us to demonstrate what proper military excellence looks like. The holographic display changed to show various alien military campaigns, each one narrated with the kind of self-satisfied smugness usually reserved for people explaining why their diet is superior to yours. Behold the siege of Kethmore, Zorthak announced, his mandibles clicking with pride. My personal favorite. We eliminated 17 enemy strongholds in precisely 43 minutes and 12 seconds. No casualties, no mistakes, no pathetic final words. Murphy watched the display with the expression of someone being forced to sit through vacation slides. Impressive. How many enemies were you fighting? 3, Zorthak replied without missing a beat. But they were very well entrenched. 3 enemies, 17 strongholds. Murphy nodded slowly. Math checks out. Science Officer Pipley activated her own display, showing off what looked like the galactic equivalent of a PowerPoint presentation titled, Why We Are Smarter Than You, a Technical Analysis. Our combat algorithms calculate optimal outcomes with 99.7% accuracy, she announced, her crystalline form literally glowing with self-importance. We factor in environmental conditions, enemy psychology, weapon effectiveness ratios, and 17 different atmospheric pressure variations. 17, Murphy repeated, oddly specific. Precision is the hallmark of superior intellect, Pipley continued. Unlike your species, which appears to operate on what your data files call gut instinct and winging it. Vexthul's tentacles writhed with what Murphy was beginning to recognize as the alien equivalent of preening. Indeed, our tactical superiority stems from millennia of evolutionary advancement. We have transcended the crude emotional responses that plague lesser species. Lesser species, Murphy said, making a note on his tablet. Got it. Continue. Take the Battle of Vorthin Prime, Quindal jumped in, clearly not wanting to be left out of the bragging session. Our forces achieved complete victory using nothing but superior intellect and advanced technology. No messy combat, no unpredictable variables, just pure calculated dominance. The hologram showed what looked like a very polite disagreement conducted entirely through strongly worded diplomatic notes and the occasional light show. Murphy watched an alien fleet defeat another alien fleet through what appeared to be a combination of technical superiority and the enemy getting bored and going home. Fascinating strategy, Murphy said. What was their tactical error? They failed to upgrade their shield harmonics to match our quantum disruption frequency, Pipley explained, as if this was the most obvious thing in the universe. Amateur mistake, really? Right, Murphy nodded. And if they had upgraded? Pipley's glow dimmed slightly. Well, then we would have adjusted our quantum disruption frequency to counter their shield harmonics. And if they adjusted back, we would adjust again. Murphy leaned forward. Sounds like you'd just keep adjusting until someone got tired and went home. That's not the point, Zorthak interjected, clearly flustered. The point is that we don't lose soldiers to meaningless final transmissions. We don't waste resources on emotional outbursts. We don't send warriors into situations where the best they can do is report present before dying uselessly. The chamber rumbled with agreement. Various alien species made their versions of approving noises, creating a symphony that sounded like a construction site having an argument with a pharmacy. Your soldier, Vexthul said, returning to his favorite topic, represents everything wrong with primitive military thinking. Sent on a rescue mission, loses contact immediately, and contributes nothing but a single word that helps no one. Tactical incompetence, Zorthak agreed. Emotional weakness, added Pipley. Complete waste of resources, Quindal chimed in. Murphy looked around the chamber at the assembled aliens, each one absolutely convinced of their own superiority. You know, you guys seem really hung up on this one soldier. Because it perfectly illustrates human inadequacy, Vexthul declared. A prime example of your species' unsuitability for galactic defense responsibilities. One soldier, Murphy repeated, out of billions. One soldier who failed spectacularly in a situation any of our warriors would have handled with ease, Zorthak rumbled. Murphy smiled, that same slight smile. "You're that confident in your abilities?" "Absolutely," came the chorus from around the chamber. "Even in impossible situations?" "Especially in impossible situations," Vexthul proclaimed. "That's what separates the advanced from the primitive." Murphy's smile grew wider. "Well then, I have a proposal for you." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of floating platforms and the occasional digestive noise from species Murphy couldn't identify. Vexthul's eye stalks swiveled to focus on him with laser-like intensity. "A proposal?" the chairman asked, his voice carrying that special tone reserved for watching someone about to make a terrible mistake. "Simple," Murphy said, clasping his hands behind his back. "You're so convinced that your superior tactics and advanced intellect make you better soldiers than humans. Prove it." Quindal made a sound like a deflating balloon, mixed with nervous laughter. "Prove it to whom?" "We have centuries of military victories." "Against other aliens," Murphy pointed out. "Using alien tactics in alien environments, following alien rules of engagement." He gestured toward the holographic displays still showing their previous victories. "Very impressive, but not exactly relevant to what happened to our soldier, is it?" General Zorthik's battle scars seemed to darken. "What are you suggesting, human?" Murphy pulled up the mission report they'd been mocking. "I'm suggesting you try the same mission, same parameters, same environment, same impossible odds. Show me how a truly advanced warrior handles the situation that supposedly proved human incompetence." The chamber erupted in what Murphy assumed was the alien equivalent of nervous chattering. Pipley's crystalline form flickered between various colors that probably meant something important in crystal being body language. "You want us to attempt a failed human mission?" she asked, her voice hitting frequencies that made Murphy's teeth itch. "I want you to attempt the same mission," Murphy corrected. "Whether it was failed or not remains to be seen." Vexthul's tentacles writhed in what Murphy was learning to recognize as either deep thought or severe indigestion. "This is highly irregular. The Galactic Council does not typically engage in field exercises to prove points to petitioner species." "Of course not," Murphy agreed amiably. "You usually just mock them from the comfort of your floating platforms. Much safer that way." The chamber went dead silent. In the cosmic hierarchy of diplomatic insults, questioning someone's courage ranked somewhere between calling their mother ugly and suggesting their military was compensating for something. Zorthik rose to his full height, which was considerable and slightly terrifying. "Are you implying that the Galactic Defense Force lacks courage?" "I'm implying that it's easy to call someone incompetent when you've never faced the same challenge," Murphy replied. "But hey, if the mission is too difficult for the galaxy's premier military organization—" "Too difficult?" Zorthik's voice dropped to a rumble that could probably be felt on neighboring planets. "Nothing is too difficult for properly trained, properly equipped, properly commanded forces." "Excellent," Murphy said, pulling out a datapad. "Then you won't mind attempting the same rescue mission? Same hostile environment, same time constraints, same resource limitations." Pipley's form stopped flickering and settled on a deep red that Murphy instinctively recognized as the universal color of oh crap. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Training simulation," Murphy explained. "Your finest military facility, your most realistic environment simulator. Recreate the exact conditions our soldier faced and show me how it should have been done." Quindal leaned forward, his curiosity apparently overriding his common sense. "And if we succeed? Then you'll have proven your point about human military incompetence and will withdraw our application to join the Galactic Defense Force." The chamber buzzed with interest. Several council members exchanged what Murphy assumed were the alien equivalent of "this is too good to be true" glances. "And if you succeed?" Vexthul asked, though his tone suggested he considered this about as likely as spontaneous tentacle generation. Murphy's grin turned slightly predatory. "Then maybe you'll listen to what present actually meant." Zorthak laughed, a sound like rocks being processed in a garbage disposal. "Human, you have no idea what you're asking. Our training facility on Kethmore Station is designed to break the strongest warriors. It tests every aspect of military competence, tactical thinking, physical endurance, technological adaptation, psychological resilience. Sounds perfect, Murphy said. Should be a nice warm-up for someone who defeated 3 enemies in 17 strongholds. The barb hit home. Zorthak's scarred carapace clicked ominously. Very well, human. We accept your challenge. I will personally demonstrate proper military procedure in your failed rescue scenario. Actually, Murphy said, checking his datapad, I think I'll handle this one myself. The chamber exploded with alien laughter that sounded like a zoo having a breakdown. Pipley's form flickered so rapidly she looked like a malfunctioning Christmas tree. You? Vexthul managed between what Murphy assumed were chuckles. The diplomat wants to attempt a military simulation? Why not? Murphy shrugged. According to you, it should be impossible for any human to succeed. Shouldn't matter which human tries. Zorthak's laughter cut off abruptly. Human, this facility has broken seasoned warriors from a dozen species. The environmental hazards alone would kill most organic life forms within minutes. Then it should be a short demonstration, Murphy replied. When can we start? The council members exchanged glances that definitely meant, this is either brilliant or completely insane. Finally, Vexthul raised a tentacle for silence. Very well, Ambassador Murphy. Tomorrow you will attempt our most challenging combat simulation, recreating the exact parameters of your soldiers' failed mission. When you inevitably fail, humanity will accept its place among the lesser species of the galaxy. Murphy nodded thoughtfully. And when I don't fail? When you don't fail, Vexthul repeated with the kind of confidence usually reserved for people explaining why the sun rises in the east. We will formally welcome humanity into the Galactic Defense Force with full honors. Deal, Murphy said, extending his hand for a handshake before remembering that half the species in the chamber didn't have hands, and the other half probably considered human contact a health hazard. As the council session ended and the various alien dignitaries filed out, still chuckling about the human's obvious death wish, Murphy remained seated in his chair, checking messages on his datapad. One message in particular caught his attention. It was dated 3 days ago from a communication relay near the galactic rim. The message contained only one word: present. Murphy smiled and put the pad away. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. Kethmore Station's training facility looked like someone had taken every nightmare about hostile alien environments and decided to make them a reality. The simulation chamber stretched for miles in every direction, featuring landscapes that seemed designed by a committee of sadistic planetary geologists. Acid pools bubbled next to frozen methane lakes, while gravity fields shifted randomly enough to make walking an extreme sport. Impressive setup, Murphy said, adjusting the environmental suit that made him look like a cross between an astronaut and someone really, really worried about germs. Very atmospheric. Really captures that everything wants to kill you vibe. General Zorthak stood at the observation platform surrounded by monitoring equipment that probably cost more than most planets' defense budgets. This simulation recreates the exact conditions your soldier encountered, he announced with the satisfaction of someone about to watch their least favorite relative attempt to parallel park. Environmental hazards, hostile terrain, limited supplies, and time constraints that would challenge even our most elite forces. The Galactic Council had gathered to watch what they were calling the Human Humiliation Hour, though Murphy suspected that wasn't the official title on the schedule. Vexthul's tentacles writhed with anticipation, while Pipley had arranged her crystalline form into what might have been a comfortable viewing position, or possibly a geometrically complex expression of smugness. The mission parameters are simple, Quindal explained, consulting a datapad that glowed with the kind of blue light that suggested it was very important and very expensive. Hostile territory, enemy forces, and one objective: reach the extraction coordinates and retrieve any survivors. Your soldier lasted approximately 40 minutes before losing contact. Murphy nodded, checking his own equipment. 40 minutes. Got it. Any particular tricks I should know about? If we told you, it wouldn't be a proper test, Zorthak rumbled, though I will mention that the environmental suit has a built-in communication system. Should you wish to surrender early, simply transmit your location and we'll extract you before the simulation kills you. Thoughtful of you, Murphy said, though I think I'll pass on the early extraction option. Pipley's form flickered to what Murphy was beginning to recognize as her "this is going to be hilarious" color. "Ambassador, the failure rate for this simulation is 97% among trained military personnel. You're a diplomat with no combat experience." "Well," Murphy said, sealing his helmet, "I guess we'll find out if diplomats are tougher than they look." The simulation began with what Murphy could only describe as maximum hostility. The ground immediately tried to dissolve his boots with acid rain, while the atmosphere attempted to poison him through 17 different chemical pathways. Gravity decided to have mood swings, making each step either a gentle hop or a bone-jarring impact. "Fascinating," he heard Pipley's voice through the comm system. "The human appears to be walking. Most candidates spend the first 10 minutes trying to adapt to the environmental conditions." Murphy continued walking, his pace steady despite the fact that the terrain seemed designed by someone who really didn't want people to succeed at walking. He stepped around acid pools, used gravitational anomalies to vault over obstacles, and generally treated the death trap like an inconvenient hiking trail. "Zorthak," Vexthol's voice crackled through the comm. "Are you certain the simulation is running at full difficulty?" "Absolutely," came the reply. "All systems are functioning normally, the human is just proceeding." 20 minutes in, Murphy reached the first major obstacle, a chasm filled with what the environmental readouts helpfully labeled as highly aggressive plasma. The simulation's original parameters required candidates to find a technical solution involving portable shield generators and quantum field manipulation. Murphy looked at the chasm, checked his equipment, then picked up a large rock and threw it across to test the distance. The rock made it safely to the other side, where it promptly burst into flames. "Right," Murphy said to himself, backing up to get a running start. "Is he planning to jump?" Quindal's voice sounded genuinely confused. Murphy took a running leap across the chasm, landing with a roll that probably looked more graceful than it felt. He stood up, brushed off the residual plasma, and continued walking. The observation deck went completely silent. "Did he just—" Pipley began. "Jump across the chasm of certain death?" Zorthak finished. Yes, he did." Murphy's voice came through the comm system, slightly out of breath but remarkably cheerful. "Hey, quick question. How exactly was my predecessor supposed to cross that thing? The technical solution seems a bit overcomplicated." More silence from the observation deck. "Most candidates construct a bridge using portable shield generators," Pipley finally answered. "Huh," Murphy replied. "Didn't think of that. Probably would have been safer." 30 minutes in, Murphy encountered the second major obstacle, a field of automated defense turrets that fired energy beams designed to incapacitate anything that moved. The standard tactical solution involved using sensor jammers and advanced stealth technology to avoid detection. Murphy stood at the edge of the field, studying the turret patterns for about 30 seconds. Then he started running in a zigzag pattern that seemed to anticipate exactly where each turret would fire. "How is he doing that?" Zorthak demanded. "The turrets have a predictable firing pattern," Murphy explained helpfully as he dodged between energy beams. "Basic pattern recognition, left, right, center, repeat with a 2-second delay for target acquisition." He reached the other side without getting hit once, pausing to wave at what he assumed was a monitoring camera. "The pattern is supposed to be random," Pipley said weakly. "Nothing's truly random," Murphy replied, continuing his steady progress toward the extraction point. "Everything has a pattern if you know what to look for." At 38 minutes, Murphy reached the final obstacle, the extraction coordinates themselves. According to the simulation, this was where the original soldier had transmitted his final message before losing contact. The area was a circular clearing surrounded by what looked like every environmental hazard the galaxy had to offer, all compressed into one particularly unpleasant space. Murphy stood at the edge of the clearing, looking around carefully. The council watched in tense silence as he approached the exact spot where their records showed the human soldier had made his final transmission. "Approaching extraction coordinates," Murphy announced. "Time to find out what happened to my predecessor." He stepped into the clearing and raised his voice. "Sergeant Hayes, if you're out there, this is Ambassador Murphy. Please respond." Silence stretched across the simulation. broken only by the ambient sounds of hostile environment attempting to be hostile. Then, from somewhere in the maze of environmental hazards, a voice replied, "About damn time someone showed up." The observation deck went so quiet you could have heard a tentacle drop. Vexthol's eye stalks practically tied themselves in knots as they swiveled between the monitoring screens and Murphy's position in the simulation. Zorthic's scarred carapace made clicking sounds that suggested either deep confusion or a mechanical malfunction. "What?" Pipley managed, her crystalline form flickering between colors so rapidly she looked like a broken traffic light. "Was that?" Murphy grinned inside his helmet. That, Science Officer Pipley, was Sergeant Rita Hayes, currently missing in action and apparently very much alive. He raised his voice toward the environmental maze. "Hayes, you decent? We've got company." "Define decent," came the reply, followed by the sound of someone moving through terrain that should have been impossible to navigate. "If you mean alive, functional, and ready to punch whoever designed this tourist trap, then yeah, I'm decent." A figure emerged from behind what looked like a camouflaged shelter made from simulation debris and jury-rigged equipment. Sergeant Rita Hayes was a compact woman who moved with the kind of confidence that suggested she'd made peace with the universe, his attempts to kill her, and found them wanting. Her environmental suit had been modified with materials Murphy couldn't identify, and she carried what appeared to be weapons improvised from simulation components. "Jesus, Murphy," she said, looking him up and down. "They sent a diplomat to rescue me? What's next, combat accountants? How are you alive?" Quindell's voice crackled through the comm system, hitting frequencies that suggested panic mixed with disbelief. Hayes looked up at the monitoring cameras with the expression of someone who'd been waiting for this conversation for a long time. "Oh, hey there, Squid Boy. You're the one who's been intercepting my status reports, right?" "Status reports?" Vexthol's tentacles writhed in confusion. "You've been transmitting status reports?" "Every day for the past 3 months," Hayes confirmed, pulling out a device that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and sheer determination. "Present and accounted for, just like regulation requires. Though I have to say, your communication network has some serious security holes." Zorthak leaned forward, his scarred carapace reflecting the monitoring screens. "Impossible. The simulation shows you went silent after one transmission." Hayes laughed, a sound that managed to be both cheerful and slightly dangerous. "The simulation shows what you programmed it to show. The actual communication logs tell a different story." She activated her improvised device, and suddenly the observation deck screens filled with transmission records. Day 1. Hayes reporting, present and accounted for, situation stable. Day 5. Hayes reporting, present and accounted for, found your supply cache. Thanks for the snacks. Day 12. Hayes reporting, present and accounted for, fixed your environmental processors. They were running about 40% below optimal. Day 23. Hayes reporting, present and accounted for. Your security system is a joke. I've been intercepting council communications for 2 weeks. The logs went on, and on. 3 months of daily reports, each one confirming that Sergeant Hayes was not only alive, but had turned the galaxy's most dangerous training facility into her personal workshop. "Impossible," Pipley whispered, her form now a pale, shocked white. "The environmental hazards alone should have killed you within hours." Hayes gestured around the hostile landscape. "What, this stuff? The acid rain's annoying, I'll give you that, but once you figure out the chemical composition, it's not hard to neutralize. The gravity fluctuations follow a predictable pattern, and the automated defenses are running on software that's about as secure as a screen door." Murphy looked around at what he'd assumed was a death trap and began to see it through Hayes's eyes. "You've been living here." "Living, working, improving the place," Hayes confirmed. "Your alien friends built themselves a nice little training facility, but they made some basic mistakes. No redundant systems, predictable patterns, and the environmental controls are all networked together. Child's play to hack if you know what you're doing." "And you know what you're doing," Murphy said. "I'm a systems engineer who got tired of fixing terrestrial problems," Hayes replied. "Figured alien problems might be more interesting. Turns out I was right." Through the comm system, they could hear the council members having what sounded like a collective nervous breakdown. Vexthul's voice, when it finally emerged, sounded like someone who'd just discovered that their insurance policy had been cancelled. "You've been intercepting our communications?" "Your secure communications," Hayes corrected. "Military frequencies, council sessions, diplomatic channels. You guys really need to upgrade your encryption. I've been listening to your meetings for weeks." Zorthak's voice dropped to a growl. "What have you heard?" Hayes pulled out another improvised device, this one clearly designed for audio playback. Suddenly, the simulation chamber filled with the sound of the council's own voices from their session the day before. Such tactical brilliance, such military precision. The warrior reports for duty, then promptly dies. Fascinating strategic thinking. Report your location, then become immediately unavailable for further reporting. The recording continued, playing back every mocking comment, every dismissive laugh, every condescending observation about human military incompetence. "You know," Hayes said conversationally, "for advanced species, you guys talk a lot of trash about people you've never actually fought." The observation deck had gone dead silent except for the sounds of various alien species trying to figure out how their foolproof plan had become a complete disaster. Murphy looked around the simulation chamber with new appreciation. "So when you transmitted present that first day?" "I was reporting for duty," Hayes confirmed. "Standard military protocol. When you're deployed in hostile territory, you check in regularly to confirm your operational status." She gestured toward her improvised camp. "Been present and accounted for ever since." "But our records show you went silent," Quindal protested weakly. "Your records show what your system was programmed to record," Hayes replied. "Someone decided that humans were too primitive to survive, so the system filtered out reports that contradicted that assumption. Classic confirmation bias, really." Pipley's crystalline form was now flickering so rapidly she looked like she might short-circuit. "You've been sabotaging the simulation?" "Improving it," Hayes corrected. "Fixed the environmental processors, upgraded the defense systems, patched about 17 security holes, and added some quality-of-life improvements. Place is actually pretty nice now once you get rid of all the unnecessarily lethal components." Murphy started laughing. Not the polite diplomatic laughter he'd been trained to use in uncomfortable situations, but genuine, unrestrained laughter that echoed through the simulation chamber. "What's so funny?" Zorthak demanded. "You've been using this place to test alien military competence," Murphy managed between laughs. "And a human engineer has been living here for 3 months, treating it like a vacation resort." Hayes nodded. "Speaking of which, Murphy, you might want to ask them about their cafeteria. 3 months of alien military rations has given me some strong opinions about Galactic Defense Force cuisine." Back in the council chamber, the atmosphere had shifted from smug superiority to what Murphy could only describe as post-disaster damage assessment. Vexthul's tentacles hung limp with defeat, while Quindal appeared to be having some kind of existential crisis involving rapid color changes and small whimpering sounds. "So," Murphy said, settling back into the defendant's chair with considerably more comfort than before, "I believe we had an agreement. When I didn't fail the simulation, humanity would be formally welcomed into the Galactic Defense Force with full honors." Zorthak's scarred carapace was making clicking sounds that suggested either deep thought or a processing error. "This is highly irregular. The simulation was supposed to be impossible for humans." "It was impossible," Hayes added from her position at the witness stand, which she'd claimed by the simple expedient of sitting down and daring anyone to move her. "Impossible to fail, that is, once you fixed all the design flaws." Pipley's crystalline form had settled into a dull gray that probably meant computational overflow. "You're saying our most advanced training facility is fundamentally flawed?" "I'm saying it was fundamentally flawed," Hayes corrected. "It's actually pretty decent now, though you might want to do something about the plasma cooling systems. They're running about 15% hot, which explains why everything keeps catching fire." Vexthul raised a tentacle for silence, his eye stalks focused on Murphy with what might have been respect or possibly severe indigestion. "Ambassador Murphy, it appears we may have underestimated human capabilities." "You think?" Murphy asked pleasantly. However, Quindell interjected, apparently having recovered from his existential crisis, this doesn't change the fundamental question of whether humanity is suitable for galactic defense responsibilities. Murphy exchanged glances with Hayes, who was examining what appeared to be an alien weapon she'd somehow acquired during her 3-month stay. What would you say, Sergeant? Think we're suitable for galactic defense responsibilities? Hayes held up the weapon, which was now glowing with modifications Murphy couldn't identify. Well, I've spent 3 months analyzing your military technology, your strategic thinking, your communication protocols, and your tactical doctrine. She paused, apparently for dramatic effect. And I have to say, you guys could use some help. The chamber erupted in indignant alien noises that sounded like a mechanical orchestra having a breakdown. Help? Zorthek roared. From humans? From anyone, really, Hayes replied cheerfully. Your security is terrible, your equipment is overcomplicated, your tactics are predictable, and your contingency planning assumes everyone will follow the same rules you do. Murphy leaned forward. What are you getting at, Sergeant? What I'm getting at, Hayes said, standing up and addressing the council directly, is that you've been fighting wars against each other for so long, you've forgotten how to fight wars against people who don't think like you do. She activated a holographic display that showed the alien military campaigns they'd been bragging about earlier. Look at these battles. Every single victory was achieved because your enemies used the same tactical frameworks, the same technological approaches, the same strategic thinking that you do. When they upgraded their shields, you upgraded your weapons. When they changed frequencies, you changed yours. It's like watching chess players who all learned from the same rulebook. Pipley's form flickered with what Murphy was beginning to recognize as nervous energy. That's how civilized warfare is conducted. That's how predictable warfare is conducted, Hayes corrected. What happens when you face an enemy that doesn't upgrade their shields but instead jumps over your weapons? What happens when they don't change frequencies but hack your communication system? What happens when they don't follow your rulebook at all? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Murphy stood up, straightening his rumpled suit. Gentlemen, ladies, crystalline entities, and gaseous life forms, let me tell you what present really meant. He walked to the center of the chamber, addressing the assembled alien dignitaries with the confidence of someone who'd just won an argument they'd been preparing for their entire career. When Sergeant Hayes transmitted present, she wasn't giving up. She wasn't failing. She wasn't dying uselessly in alien territory. Murphy's voice carried the kind of authority that made people listen whether they wanted to or not. She was doing what humans do when faced with impossible odds. She was adapting. Every day for 3 months she reported present, because that's what human soldiers do. We show up. We adapt. We find solutions to problems that aren't supposed to have solutions. We don't just survive your death traps, we improve them. Vexthal's tentacles writhed with what Murphy hoped was thoughtful consideration, rather than preparation for violence. And you believe this qualifies humanity for galactic defense responsibilities? I believe this qualifies humanity for galactic defense leadership, Murphy replied. The chamber exploded with alien protests that probably violated several noise ordinances and at least one treaty regarding cruel and unusual punishment. Leadership? Quindell squeaked. Humanity wants to lead the Galactic Defense Force? Humanity wants to fix the Galactic Defense Force, Murphy corrected. Because frankly, based on what we've seen here today, you need it. Hayes held up her modified alien weapon. Case in point, this energy rifle took me about 6 hours to improve. Better targeting system, more efficient power consumption, and I added a setting for non-lethal takedowns. Your original design was functional, but it had the tactical flexibility of a brick. That weapon is the result of centuries of advanced engineering, Zorthak protested. That weapon is the result of centuries of people making the same assumptions, Hayes replied. Sometimes you need fresh eyes to see the obvious solutions. Murphy nodded. Which brings us back to our original proposal. Humanity doesn't just want to join the Galactic Defense Force. We want to help it become something more than a collection of species fighting the same wars in the same ways against the same enemies. What exactly are you proposing? Vexthul asked. his voice carrying the weary tone of someone who suspected they were about to hear something they wouldn't like. Joint command structure, Murphy said. Human tactical innovation combined with alien technological advancement. Your resources are adaptability, your experience our creativity. Hayes grinned. Plus, we'll fix all the security holes in your computer systems. Seriously, I could hack your entire fleet with a smartphone and a decent Wi-Fi connection. The council members exchanged glances that definitely meant, this is either the best idea we've ever heard, or the worst mistake in galactic history. Finally, Vexthul raised a tentacle for silence. Ambassador Murphy, Sergeant Hayes, you present a compelling argument. However, such a radical restructuring of galactic defense protocols would require extensive deliberation. Of course, Murphy agreed. Take all the time you need. Hayes and I will just be here, present and accounted for, whenever you're ready to discuss the details. He sat back down in his chair, pulled out his data pad, and began checking messages with the casual confidence of someone who'd just negotiated the deal of the century. Hayes remained standing, still examining her modified weapon. Oh, and Chairman Vexthul, you might want to upgrade your cafeteria menu. 3 months of reconstituted nutrient paste gives a person strong opinions about military cuisine. As the council session dissolved into heated alien discussions about the implications of human military leadership, Murphy and Hayes sat in comfortable silence, two humans who'd just changed the course of galactic history by showing up and refusing to fail. So, Hayes said eventually, how's the diplomatic life treating you? Murphy looked around at the chaos they'd created and smiled. Can't complain. The travel's interesting, the work's challenging, and apparently we just got promoted. Present and accounted for, Hayes agreed. And somewhere in the council chamber's cacophony of alien voices planning humanity's integration into galactic defense, the phrase took on its true meaning. Not just attendance, but readiness. Not just survival, but improvement. Not just following orders, but taking responsibility for making things better. Present and ready for whatever came next. Present and accounted for.